Hello, this is the Green Corn Rebellion Show. I'm Gregory Harden II, and today I am here with my friend, JoBeth Hamon, who is the city councilor for Ward 6 in Oklahoma City and is currently running for re-election. The election for that is February 14th. So how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here. I'm sort of mostly these days I feel like if I'm upright, then I'm doing good. So sometimes about all I can hope for.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that, especially when, during a campaign, it's, you know, just being able to be awake and alert is a blessing.
Yes, for sure.
Um, so,
Whoa, 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 whoa. Stop what you're doing. Okay. If you like this video and you like the other content on my channel, please hit the like button on this video. Also, go hit subscribe, like right now. And also, when you hit subscribe, click the bell so you can get notifications whenever I put out a new video. So, thanks. Alright, enjoy the rest of the video.
what are some of your accomplishments that you've had since you've been on the city council over the last few years?
Well, I feel like I have like a handful of things that are the more like they're like more in the weeds, like practical things of like policies that we've changed or funding that we've gotten passed or whatever. Even though in a lot of those things I still feel like it's not as much as we need, or it doesn't meet really the moments that we've been presented with. But I do feel like my voice and presence has accomplished more than we would have gotten without it. And then sort of on, and like I kind of, I've been thinking about this critique of mine that people seem to give me, that I'm all talk, no results or whatever. And I'm like, well, we did pass urban chickens, which was something that like advocates in the city have been trying to do for 10 years prior to me even being on council, and could never get quite done because we didn't have leadership on council that was willing to say, even though I might get a few people that are reaching out and oppose this, that, I'm hearing majority overwhelming support, and I'm willing to, say, yes, I'll do something that I might be getting, negative feedback from. I'm willing to sort of step out on a limb in a way, even though I think for urban hens, it's like, by the time I was on council, it wasn't as much of a limb as it was maybe 10 years ago. Like a lot of has culturally changed and just changed in the city, where I think a lot more people are better educated about that sort of thing. But then also just things like, little policy tweaks where, I learned early on in my term, this first term, that to do like street performance, like if you wanted to go down to Bricktown, or if there was like, maybe down to like at the park, Myriad Gardens or whatever, and put out your guitar case on the corner and play music, you had to get a permit for that. And I didn't realize that was even the case. And so I was able to work with some like arts advocates as well as staff to change that, where you now don't have to get a permit, you don't have to get a background check. There are still certain areas within downtown where you have to consult with the Parks and Rec department just for like safety concerns of like, we don't want you too close to the Bricktown Canal, like, because we want to make sure that like rights of way and sidewalks are clear. But you don't have to go through this weird permitting process that is really like a gatekeeping thing. And so like even just like being able to kind of step into like this idea of us as being like a big league city, where people go to cities all over the country and you see people busking and doing street performance of different kinds, and there adds like a life to the street that wasn't, that we just didn't have. We were kind of had big government, getting in the way of creating that kind of atmosphere. So there's things like that I feel like feel small, but actually in the broader scheme of like moving forward as like a 21st century city are like actually make us, live up to that desire that we say we have. And then I think more broadly, as far as accomplishments, to me, even though, I'm sure there are people who don't think that this is an accomplishment, but I think the conversation about certain things and the fact that they have become conversations that the city is involved in are, even if we haven't taken a lot of direct steps or action on them yet, the fact that like discussion about homelessness now actually doesn't ever seem to be divorced, at least, in the conversation from affordable housing and access to housing, like to me is a huge accomplishment. Because again, 5 years ago, and I still hear it all the time, of course, that people say, oh, people don't want help. People are just homeless because they want to be that way, et cetera. That by and large, the conversation, at least from the Horseshoe, the conversation, I even see a discourse online kind of locally that more people are pushing back and saying, is that really the case? It's not the sort of dominant conversation isn't, oh, we just need to get these people out of here, or we need to, break down camps and not provide actual solutions to those problems. To me, that's a huge accomplishment that, again, I think maybe if I weren't there, maybe would have like tiptoed a little bit forward, because I think to me, it's always the community is really activists and advocates in the community are really the ones that open up possibilities for conversation in the government level, because government, as much as we have been sort of taught to believe, or like sometimes I think are inclined to believe that, government is, handing things down to people, it's really responding to people. And so the more that conversation changes in the community, the more it makes it possible at the government level, at the sort of council level, in my case, to push that forward. And I think it's a back and forth, like the fact that I was elected and that there is someone on the Horseshoe that when these issues come, to that level, or if I'm in meetings with people, the conversation is different because I'm there. And I'm introducing different ideas, or, asking questions that maybe wouldn't have been asked, that it's still working with the community and working with advocates and different people that are working in these different spaces in the community to like amplify those things. And because the more that those pieces all kind of work in concert, the easier it is for people in my position, or people who maybe aren't, don't have the same mindset as I do, or same experiences as I do, but are in these leadership positions on council, to hear those voices more, that they're not just hearing from the people that say, I want these people off my property or off the, property next to me because, they are criminals or, whatever, that they're also hearing the experiences of people who have been homeless, who work with people experiencing homelessness, or even not as far as like exact homelessness, but just housing insecurity in general, that there are people like myself that are renters sitting on council, or James Cooper, that it can speak from the renter's perspective of how difficult it can be to be in that position. That I think that has, I've, as much as I don't like taking credit for things, because I never think it's just me, like I do think that my being on council has really changed that conversation and moved us a lot forward a lot more quickly than we would be if I, weren't in this position.
Okay. And what are some things that you are, if reelected, wanting to work towards to get changed in the city, or to bring more awareness to as a member of city council?
Some of the things that have been coming to mind recently as I've been asked some of these questions, I've had to sort of do a little more intentional reflection on them. You know, in 2021, I think it was, we accepted, the planning department had commissioned a affordable housing study, or a housing affordability study, I should say, of the city, and kind of what the landscape looks like as far as like incomes, rents, mortgages, rent, you know, cost burden for people, quality of housing in the city, as far as, you know, maybe something's technically affordable, but it's substandard, predatory practices of various mortgage or landlord type of situations. And out of that came, a slew of recommendations that I think are all, we need to be pursuing all of them. But some of the more some of them are much, are going to take a much longer time because we need like state authorization. And so we have to do different, things at the state level to allow for mechanisms like, say, like a community land bank. That's something I'm really interested in having the city start is, and it's sometimes they're called community land trusts or land banks, and other communities have initiated them essentially as a mechanism to receive and preserve housing affordability. So right now everything's so at the whims of the market that if, say, a person passes away, or if someone's not paying their property taxes and a piece of property goes to the county auction, private investment, private interest can just purchase that and flip it and jack up the rent, or if it's they want to sell it, they're maybe selling it at a price point that's not very accessible for very many people. And so land banks can often be a mechanism to receive those types of properties. And essentially, like, there's not a profit motive to the land bank. It can just be like a mechanism to hold that property, sometimes do investment in the property through different government or sometimes like private investment, that can then but preserve affordability. So you're selling it back to somebody in the community that's like going to be owner occupied, or maybe if it is like a multifamily property, having some level of ownership in that property versus just being a renter. There's different mechanisms you can use to do that, and with a land bank. So that's something I'm really interested in us pursuing more aggressively in the next few years. It's kind of been on the map, but like I said, it'll take the state to kind of allow communities to do that through like legalese, all the legalese that needs to be checked off. But then the other thing that's a lot more present to me, just because it's not that far away timeline wise, is we will likely have a general obligation bond election in probably 2026 is what we've been told. And one of the recommendations in the housing affordability study is not only, in our 2017 bond, we put aside some funds to assist with affordable housing. And really the way the policy was written was that it was really for like workforce affordable. So more someone like me, nonprofit, nurse, teacher, people that are kind of like moderate income, but struggle to maybe access housing in different parts of the city that are more expensive to develop. So I'd really like us to see us, and we only did $10 million of it. So I'd really like us to see us do more funds and then widen that policy so that we're actually creating true like mixed income communities where if it's a multifamily property, it's not just, workforce and then market rate. It's maybe market rate, workforce, low income, accepting vouchers, that kind of thing. So you really truly have like a range of incomes that are able to access that property. And then the other thing I'd really like us to use some bond dollars to invest in is that, and this comes from the recommendations from that study as well, is a revolving loan fund to help with like property maintenance that's like low interest, no interest loans for like homeowners, or down payment assistance for homeowners, that, again, is low to no interest, because we do have some federal dollars that assist with those sorts of things in the city, but every year they just like fly out the door and like there's a huge waiting list. And so knowing, and especially this time around, knocking doors, just seeing more starkly the how many of our neighborhoods and the core of the city in Ward 6, there are so many properties that either someone wants to age in place but is struggling to maintain their property, all the yard facade, updating their windows so that they're more like energy efficient, those sorts of things, or even just like young people trying to compete in the market and to be a first-time homeowner or something like that, or just low income folks in general trying to compete in the market is just very difficult right now. And I think has been, but in the last few years, I think has gotten a little more acute. So I'd really love to see us invest some dollars locally in that, so that one, it can be like we invest it in the short term through these bond dollars, but it continues to be a fund that can exist into the future because it is a revolving loan fund that those get paid back and then more people can benefit over time, so that we can really expand the reach of what those federal dollars that we're already administering can actually do, and really make sure that, especially for Ward 6, as it is, there is a lot of more investment and development happening, that we actually, again, keep like mixed income communities and access for people across the income range to stay within Ward 6 and not get displaced because of just market whims, that we don't have a lot of tools right now to help close that gap for people.
Okay. So my last question is kind of a fun one.
Okay.
As a person who lives in Potawatomi County and has lived in Potawatomi County my whole life, I've looked at a map of Oklahoma City. Really big. It doesn't just encompass Oklahoma County. It also has parts of Cleveland County and Canadian County, and also Logan County too, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so, a little bit.
A little bit. But there's also a little piece
There is
that is in Potawatomi County. Why is that there? Why has that been annexed by Oklahoma City? And how long has it been annexed by Oklahoma City?
I should actually ask. I don't know the timeline of when that was annexed. I have to assume it was pre-80s. But because since I've been on council, we've annexed a handful of we've annexed land into the city since I've even been on council, that it could be, even more recent, but I know the sort of history of our kind of annexation boom was kind of probably the 60s through the 80s or so. And so, but I should ask some of the specifics and get some of that information and share it with you. Because my understanding is there have been discussions about de-annexing, different parts of the city, either back to unincorporated, county land or into another municipality. And I have been told, the thing I've been told about why we have not de-annexed that little square that's in Potawatomi County is that for some reason it generates, and again, we can't, the legality of us knowing where in different parts of what both industry, well, I should say it like this. When we are told like where sales tax is coming from, sales and use tax is coming from within the city, there's like various laws that restrict more than just a few people in our finance department to know like what the specific businesses where they were coming from. If like, it's like we can know these like broad categories like pharmacy retail. So like a CVS or a Walgreens type store, but I can't know this CVS on the corner of May and 50th, right? Like I can't know their specific, right? But they can aggregate it up to like grocery or, like retail clothes or retail, camping, like those sorts of these like large categories. similarly, there's like zip code sort of restrictions, I believe, is my understanding. But the sort of thing that's been shared through me or with me through the grapevine is that little square of Potawatomi County actually generates a good amount of sales and use tax for us, that there has not been an interest from the city to de-annex it for that reason. And I should just go look on the county records for Potawatomi County and see who even owns that area, because I don't know if I have to assume it's privately owned if it's generating sales and use tax, but I've yet to really go look at like what is there. I think a little bit I'm like, oh, I might be stepping on some toes legally to know that, but I feel like if I'm doing it on my own, it's not a problem. I can't be using like city channels to do it. But it's a really odd little square that's just like, because it's like you can see when you look at the map, if you look at just Ward 4, because that's where it's in. Yeah. It's like the line, and then there's just like a little square of Potawatomi County, and it's like, why is just that? Because it's not like a large, usually it seems like when you see these annexations, it's this, larger kind of section of an area, but it's just this tiny little square. So, but I can ask, and I'll put it on my list to ask the history of when it got annexed and who requested it, because a private property owner can request to be annexed into a city. If they're in one city and they want to actually be in a different one and they're like right on that line, they can request that. Or if they're in unincorporated county land, they can request to be in the municipality or the city, obviously in our annexation grab and, over in our historical records, can also do that work. So I can ask some of those questions and find that out for you.
All right.
It's a very odd, the history of annexation stuff just is fascinating to me, because I get it to a certain extent what the logic was, I guess, that like, oh, if we have more land, we'll get more sales tax potentially. But then it's like, yeah, also you have all the infrastructure that you're gonna like, it seems so short-sighted. And so I'm always very curious, because in the stuff I've read and talked to people who were around in those times, I've never heard that there was a big push against it to say, but like, at what point are we gonna, like, at what point is this actually going to even out where like, yeah, we might be able to have control over this land and gain any property tax or use tax that's generated on it, but like at what is the cost of infrastructure? So either that movement existed but was not obviously in the sort of halls of power, or it did was a conversation but the majority just kind of plowed forward on its own.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming on, and I wish you luck in your campaign on the 14th, February 14th.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to February 15th very much.